وَوَقْتُ الْفَجْرِ مِنْ ذَلِكَ إِلَى طُلُوعِ الشَّمْسِ. And the timing of Fajr is from that time. What is from that time? Al-Fajr al-Thani. From that time, meaning from Fajr al-Thani. إِلَى طُلُوعِ الشَّمْسِ, until the sun rise. Until the sun rise. So the Fajr timing as well, is pretty much by unanimous consensus. There is really no significant ikhtilaf, even though there's a very trivial ikhtilaf in early Islam. But amongst the four madhahib, there is no ikhtilaf. The beginning and end of Fajr is agreed upon by the madhahib. That Fajr begins when the Fajr as-Sadiq is seen, not al-Fajr al-Kadhib. Once again, what is the lying Fajr? The lying Fajr is the narrow, thin ray. And the truthful Fajr is when that ray expands and it is across the whole horizon. That is the truthful Fajr. That is when Fajr begins, and it will last until Tulu'i Shams, until the rise of the sun. And what is the rise of the sun? Imagine you're on an ocean boat and there's complete flat horizon. The rise of the sun is when you first see the disk of the sun. That is the sunrise. And in case you do not have that flat horizon, then you guesstimate, and that's what our charts do. Our charts bring it down to the minute, and so our charts are highly accurate. There are two timings on our charts that are non-negotiable. In fact, three timings that are literally scientific now. They're down to the millisecond we can do. And that is the zawal. When does it begin? We know exactly. It's down to science. We can do that. In any place on the earth, there are equations and whatnot. And al-Fajr al-Sadiq, sunrise, not al-Fajr al-Sadiq. Sunrise, when the disk of the sun comes up, and sunset. We can do this down to the millisecond if we wanted to. That's what our modern scientists have done. The other timings are somewhat relative. What are the other timings? Al-Fajr al-Sadiq. Okay? Al-Fajr al-Sadiq is somewhat relative. It's really, you can have two people there, their eyesights are slightly different. And they might have a few minutes difference in Al-Fajr al-Sadiq. Okay? And also Ash-Shafaq al-Ahmar disappearing, which is the end of Maghrib time. There's no scientific equation that can tell you the redness has disappeared and the whiteness has begun. Why? Because the redness fades into whiteness. And this is relative to one's eyesight. Okay? Subjective. And it depends on the weather. And it depends on... So there's no equation that can tell you exactly when what salah begins. Isha begins. Okay? Equations can tell you when Dhuhr begins. When Maghrib begins. When Fajr ends. No equation can tell you when Fajr starts, right? And that is why modern astronomers have come together, Muslim astronomers, and they have tried to guesstimate how many degrees below the horizon must the sun be in order to call Al-Fajr al-Sadiq. And how many degrees beneath the horizon the sun must be in order to call Isha. You understand? Simple math. You have the axis below the horizon. You have 1 degree to 360 degrees, right? So you have the whole 360 degrees. So below the horizon, how many degrees must the sun be to get Al-Fajr al-Sadiq? And the lower the angle, so the earlier will it be. And the higher the angle, slowly but surely, we're talking about Fajr. Slowly but surely, the timing will be pushed up. Okay? So, for example, here in Memphis, our two masajids have followed different positions in these numbers. Okay? And the one says 18, the other says 14 or 15. The other says 15. And Isna, which is what we are following, has said 15. And our sister masjid, which is following al-Qura, has said 18. So a difference of 3 degrees. And those 3 degrees translates into 15 minutes. How much was it this year? 15 minutes, 17 minutes, like that, you know? So look, it's not that much difference, 17 minutes. But this is where the ikhtilaf comes. Who will decide? It's subjective. Because in the end of the day, how do you know? It's not precise science that the Fajr al-Sadiq comes all the way in. And the same goes for Isha as well. That is it 15 below or is it 18 below? When does Ash-Shafaq al-Ahmar disappear, or is it even 19? And all of this plays into part when we derive our charts. So وَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَكُمُ الْخَيْطُ الْأَبْيَضُ مِنَ الْخَيْطِ الْأَسْوَدِ مِنَ الْفَجْرِ. So what this means is that al-khayt al-abyad and al-khayt al-aswad are the two streaks on the horizon. The two parallel streaks. That's the Fajr al-Sadiq. Okay? Eat and drink until you can see the black string from the white string before Fajr. This is what the Quran says. Abu Hurairah came to the Prophet and said, Ya Rasulullah, last night I kept on looking at the black string and the dark string and the white string, and I kept on eating until I could tell the two apart. And the Prophet said, you must have a very big pillow, O Abu Hurairah, because the reference is not to two strings on your pillow. The reference is al-khayt al-abyad min al-khayt al-aswad, which means the horizon. So that's the horizontal white line from the horizontal black horizon. That means you see the distance, right? Two horizontal lines. That white horizontal line, that is al-Fajr al-Sadiq. This is what Allah is saying. Eat and drink until the white thread is distinct from the black. And that's al-Fajr al-Sadiq. So we said that cannot be calculated scientifically because it's subjective. And that's why we have different charts for Fajr, 15 degrees, 18 degrees. Some even say 19 degrees, by the way. Okay, there are masjids, especially in England, which makes it even more difficult because they have an earlier Fajr. They say 19 degrees. And therefore, this year, for example, they literally had, in some places in England, Fajr was 3:20 or something, or even 2 something in some northern places. And Maghrib is coming in at 10 something, this much. And anyway, that's their madhab. And as I said many times, when we get to Ramadan, I say the same thing, that we should try to make Islam easier upon the people, and there is some leeway. It's not clear cut over here. What is al-Fajr al-Sadiq in terms of degrees? Allahu A'lam. And I don't see a problem following a respected body. Fiqh Council has said 15, so alhamdulillah, no problem. And if somebody feels very passionately against this, then in your own personal life, follow the 18, no problem. But for the people, we try to make it easy, especially because it is summer months and we want our youngsters and teenagers to fast. And as I said, it's not a clear cut. In any case, back to our matan. So where were we? So وَوَقْتُ الْفَجْرِ مِنْ ذَلِكَ إِلَى طُلُوعِ الشَّمْسِ. Okay, so we then talked about the 5 salawats. وَمَنْ كَبَّرَ لِلصَّلَاةِ قَبْلَ خُرُوجِ وَقْتِهَا فَقَدْ أَدْرَكَهَا. وَمَنْ كَبَّرَ لِلصَّلَاةِ قبل خروج وقتها فقد أدركها. And whoever says the takbir for the salah before the salah timing finishes is considered to have caught it. So according to this statement, if Maghrib begins at 7:17 and you stand at 7:16 for Asr and you had some type of darura, and you say Allahu Akbar, then 7:17 comes in. According to this position, you have just caught Asr Salah. Okay? And this is one opinion even within the Hanbali madhab. The Hanbali madhab has multiple opinions on this issue. The other opinion, which I have to say is probably the stronger one, is whoever catches one ruku' before the time begins has caught the salah. Whoever catches one ruku' before the time begins, has caught that salah. And that is because our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam explicitly said, "Man adraka ar-ruku'." Whoever catches the ruku' before the beginning of the next salah, then he is the one who has caught that salah. And inshallah we will get into some ahadith about salah timings as well. So in any case, the point being, the madhahib pretty much all agree that if you catch a part of the salah before the next salah begins, you have caught the whole salah. Okay? So therefore, in case somebody overslept, you wake up and there's 2 minutes left, you should hurry up for the wudu. It makes sense now to hurry up for the wudu and then immediately begin the salah. Don't delay and say, oh, it's already too late. Because even if you catch, according to the majority, 1 rak'ah, okay, and this is also Ibn Taymiyyah's, that you have to catch the rak'ah, right? Whoever catches the rak'ah, and that's because the Prophet ﷺ said, Man adraka rak'ah qabla tulu'i shamsi. Whoever does, or qabla ghurub shams, whoever does 1 rak'ah before the sun sets has caught asr. Okay, so this clearly shows you have to get the ruku' done. 1 ruku', then you have caught the entire salah. And وَالصَّلَاةُ فِي أَوَّلِ الْوَقْتِ أَفْضَلُ إِلَّا الْعِشَاءَ الْآخِرَةِ وَفِي شِدَّةِ الْحَرِّ فِي الظُّهْرِ. So now he mentions when within these 2 spectrums, when should the salah be prayed? So every salah has 2 spectrums. Now he gets to the next point. He's told us, what if we delay as long as you get, he says takbir, that's fine, 1 opinion. Another opinion, 1 ruku'. Then he gets to within this spectrum, where should we emphasize? So he says, the general rule was salatu fi awwal al-waqti afdal. Praying at the beginning timing is always better. Then he makes 2 exceptions. The first, illa fil isha al-akhirah, except for the second isha. Why does he call it the second isha? Because it is also allowed to call Fajr the first isha. Because isha means asha, which means at night. Isha means at night time. So Fajr is also called the first isha. Sometimes in classical hadith and books of fiqh, it is sometimes called the first isha. And isha al-akhirah then becomes the second isha, which is what we call isha. Okay? So he says, it's always better to pray at the beginning timing, except for Isha al-Akhirah, which is the regular prayer of Isha. It is better to delay it. So why is it better to delay it? Because it is authentically narrated that the Prophet ﷺ delayed praying Isha until half the masjid went to sleep and until some of the Sahaba began to snore. And some of the Sahaba began to gently knock on the door of the Prophet ﷺ that why isn't he coming out, what's going on? And this shows us they would not pray the salah knowing he was there until he came out. That there was never a jama'ah in Medina when the Prophet ﷺ was in his room, except of course when? His death sickness, maradul maut. The only time. Otherwise, never in the history of Islam when the Prophet ﷺ was inside. Once or twice, when he was known to have gone outside the city, they prayed. And of course, outside the city meaning not on an expedition, but they know he's going to visit somebody on the outskirts and it's delayed, they'll pray. Otherwise, when he's in the prayer in his house, of course, they will wait for him. So they waited until finally Umar ibn al-Khattab got enough courage to knock on the door and find out what's going on, Ya Rasulullah. So the Prophet ﷺ came out and he said, Wallahi innaha la waqtuha. Wallahi, this is the real timing of Isha. If it were not for the fact that I don't want to make difficult for my ummah. The hadith is in Bukhari and Muslim. Okay? This is the real timing. Meaning this is the time we should pray Isha. But I just don't want to make it difficult for the ummah. So the Prophet ﷺ encouraged delaying Salatul Isha to a later time. And from this, the Hanbali madhab also took its cue. And they said, the general rule for Isha, it's better to be opposite than the other salat, which is earliest the best. For Isha, the later the better. And this is also mentioned in another hadith by Abu Barda al-Aslami, who said that كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يستحب أن يؤخر العشاء. The Prophet ﷺ would prefer to delay Salatul Isha. He would prefer to delay Salatul Isha, muttafaq alayh. So this hadith also mentions he would prefer to delay Salatul Isha. Therefore, if you are not praying in Jama'ah, if you're at home, then it is preferred to delay Isha till after an hour or two that his time comes in. And do not delay it till after 1/3 or 1/2 of the night. Okay? That is when you should not delay it until. But you delay it an hour or two after it comes in. Okay? In fact, in these days, even if you delay till 11 p.m., let's say, would be good. Okay, if you delay it till 10:30 p.m., if you're at home, it would be good. Again, you do the calculation, find the middle, then a little bit before then, that would be a good time to pray Isha, no problem. But of course, it is completely jaiz to pray from the beginning time. So this is the first exception. What is the second exception? And the second exception, he said, is وَفِي شِدَّةِ الْحَرِّ الظُّهْرَ. And in the time of extreme heat, also dhuhr is preferred to delay. So, dhuhr is only delayed in the summer months, according to the Hanbali madhab. Dhuhr, it is sunnah and mustahab to delay it, but only seasonal, one season. So, for 2.5 months or 3 months of the year, it is mustahab to delay dhuhr. The rest of the year, dhuhr should be prayed at its earliest time. Okay? At its earliest time. Now, once again, what are we talking about? The mustahab timing. We all agree, all the madhahib agree, between time A to time B you can pray. We're ready to do it. As long as it's waqt al-ikhtiyari. All of the 5 salawat, you may pray at any time in the waqt al-ikhtiyari. If you wanted to get the most reward, when should you pray? So Fajr, the earliest. Okay? Asr, the earliest. Maghrib, the earliest. Isha, the latest. Dhuhr, you look at the season. Fall, spring, winter, the earliest. Summertime, shiddat al-har, which is really just 2 months of the year, that is when it is mustahab to delay. Where did they get this from? They got it from a hadith in Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. The Prophet ﷺ said, أبردوا بالظهر في شدة الحر فإن شدة الحر من فيح جهنم. أبردوا بالظهر في شدة الحر. Pray dhuhr at a cooler time, when it is extremely hot. فَإِنَّ شِدَّةَ الْحَرِّ, because the extremely hot weather is from فِيحِ جَهَنَّمْ. And فِيحِ جَهَنَّمْ is the hot, gusting winds of Jahannam. So, this hadith says that the summer months, it is as if it's coming from the cold mines of Jahannam. Okay? And those are in the desert, you feel this especially more so. So the Prophet said, don't pray when those winds are coming straight from Jahannam. Let it cool down. But once again, this is mustahab. You may pray at its earlier time, you may pray at its latest time. So these, we have finished the entire timings of Salah. And I wanted to finish the third one, but unfortunately I don't have time to start it now. We only have 10 minutes left, so I just want to then pause over here. Then I wanted to finish shart al-thalith, but it is a bit too long to finish, and that's going to take us at least 20 minutes to do, and I want to leave time for Q&A, inshallah. We do have 15 minutes if you want to. You want to move on, or you want to have Q&A? Because if we move on, there's not going to be any Q&A, because we're going to have to then literally break for Isha. So it's up to you. Move on. Huh? Q&A? I think Q&A is better, because then we can even have some time, inshallah. Just digest all of this material, inshallah. It's enough material for one day. Q&A. Yes, bismillah. Jama' of Dhuhr and Asr in the masjid should only be done in exceptional circumstances. It should not be made a rule. So if it gets extremely hot in most climates of the world, extremely hot would be a regular phenomenon the country is used to. And you get accustomed and acclimatized to your zone. And therefore, it should not be done regularly, because this would be against the sunnah. But on occasion, if something happens, an extreme thunderstorm or a hurricane alert or whatever, in this case, yes, you can combine Dhuhr and Asr, or you can combine Maghrib and Isha. Okay? By the way, I realized I wanted to go over some hadith with you so that you know some of the evidences. So just you can write down these 2 or 3 hadith. I hope you all have memorized the hadith of Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As and the hadith of Jibreel, we call it. At least you have these 2 down. These are the 2 main hadith. One hadith of Abi Barza al-Aslami, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would pray Asr, And then we would go back to our tents or our houses or our camel pens, all of this is translated aloud, at the furthest sides of Medina, and the sun would still be hot. وَالشَّمْسُ حَيَّةٌ. And this shows us that the beginning time of Asr cannot be the Hanafi time that they say. Because he is saying we would walk for, in essence, 45 minutes. And the sun would still be hot. وَالشَّمْسُ حَيَّةٌ. And this is of the primary evidences that Asr comes in basically when the sun is still hot, and it lasts for a long time when the sun is still hot. And the hadith goes on, وَكَانَ يَسْتَحِبُّ أَن يُؤَخِّرَ مِنَ الْعِشَاءِ. And he would love to delay Salatul Isha. So this hadith is in Sahih Muslim, and it tells us two things. Number one, that the regular sunnah of praying Asr was that even for 45 minutes or an hour after Asr, the sun would still be shining hot. And the Prophet ﷺ would love to delay praying Isha. Hadith in Bukhari and Muslim from Rafi' ibn Khadij that the Prophet ﷺ, or كنا نصلي المغرب مع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فينصرف أحدنا وإنه ليبصر مواقع نبله متفق عليه. So Rafi' ibn Khadij says, it was our custom to pray Maghrib with the Prophet ﷺ, and when we turned around and left after praying Salat al-Maghrib, we could still see the places where our arrows had fallen. Our arrows had fallen, meaning after they finish Maghrib Salah, they turn around and they can see their target practice, they're shooting, they can still see an arrow. How many meters? 40 meters away? 30 meters away? I don't know how long an arrow goes. Think about it. At least 100 feet, right? At least 100 feet or 50 feet or whatever. So we could still see the place where our arrows had landed. It's visible, which means what? Maghrib is early, and not only that, but the brightness is still there. The brightness is still there at the end of Maghrib. At the end of Maghrib. Okay? So the Prophet would pray Maghrib at right on time. Right on time. So in our case, for example, if Maghrib is at 7:15, basically 7:15 will be Adhan and Iqamah, then he'd pray. And right after Maghrib, it's still light in the area. عن عائشة رضي الله عنها قالت أعتم النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ذات ليلة بالعشاء حتى ذهب عامة الليل ثم خرج فصلى وقال إنه لوقتها لولا أن أشق على أمتي رواه Muslim. This is the famous hadith I just said that Aisha narrated that one day the Prophet ﷺ delayed Isha until most of the night had gone. Then he came outside and he said, this is really the timing, if only I didn't want to make it difficult for my ummah. If only I didn't want to make it difficult for my ummah. Then the other hadith, and these are all hadith related to salat timing, so you should know them. They come in handy to know your evidences. وعن رافع بن خديج رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أصبحوا بالصبح فإنه أعظم لأجوركم رواه أبو داود والترمذي. So authentic hadith. أصبحوا بالصبح. Pray the subh in the subh. أصبحوا بالصبح. Because it will increase your ajr. Now what does it mean, أصبحوا بالصبح? أصبحوا means continue doing something until the subh comes in. Asbihu, continue doing it until the timing comes in of dawn. And the majority have said this means that Fajr Salah should be prayed long, lengthy prayer. This is the meaning the majority have derived. That Asbihu bis subhi. Pray the subh until the sun is almost about to rise. Meaning, make it a long salah. Because that is better for your ajr. This is the majority interpretation. And one madhab says, no. Fajr has also the the mustahab time of delaying it till the end. You understand this point? Just like we said, Isha should be delayed. Right? One madhab, not the Hanbali madhab, that's why it's not in here. One madhab said, the best timing for Fajr is the end timing. And the other three madhab said the best timing for Fajr is the beginning time. Where did this difference come from? This hadith right here. أصبحوا بالصبح. What does it mean, أصبحوا بالصبح? The three madhab said, pray Fajr so long that the twilight, not the twilight, but the dawn begins to, you get to see it almost. And the one madhab said, begin the salah right before the sun rises. You see the difference here. Now, why did the other three interpret it the other way? Because Aisha radiallahu anha narrates, the women of the Ansar would pray Fajr with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and then return home wrapped up in their shawls, متلفعات بمروطهن لا يعرفهن أحد من الغلس. No one could recognize them because how dark it was. So Aisha narrates that the regular pattern was the women would pray Fajr, then they would go back helter-skelter to their houses. Nobody would even recognize them because it was so dark. Which shows you, when did the process begin Fajr? Early. Okay? So based on that, they said, أصبحوا بالصبح means, if you're able to, you're praying alone, nobody else is there, go ahead and recite 5, 10 pages, 20 pages. Make it a long salah. That's better for your ajr. And one madhab said, no, that's not the meaning. The final hadith that we'll do, and then I open the floor for question again. The final hadith we'll do, وعن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من أدرك من الصبح ركعة قبل أن تطلع الشمس فقد أدرك الصبح ومن أدرك ركعة من العصر قبل أن تغرب الشمس فقد أدرك العصر متفق عليه. This is the famous hadith because of which Ibn Taymiyyah and others said the correct opinion, من أدرك ركعة من الصبح قبل أن تطلع الشمس فقد أدرك الصبح. Whoever catches a rak'ah of the Fajr before the sun actually rises has caught the Fajr. And whoever catches a rak'ah of Asr before the sun sets has caught the entire prayer of Asr. This hadith is Bukhari and Muslim, muttafaq alayh. So based on this hadith, the majority of scholars, and that's why even I would politely disagree as well, and it is within the Hanbali madhab. So within the Hanbali madhab, Ibn Taymiyyah and others, they felt that it's not whoever catches the takbir, it's whoever catches the rak'ah. He catches the ruku'. Okay? 5 more minutes of questions, inshallah. Yes, go ahead. Bismillah.
You mentioned about what the salat that meant salat al-duhr. So this will make really the Maghrib is the middle because of the critical timing for it, because it's so short and stuff like that.
The Maghrib is the middle. No, the middle here doesn't necessarily mean. See, there are 5 salawat. Depending on where you consider the first one, each one can be the middle. There is no beginning or end, like depending on when you want to start.
Yeah, I mean, just because what you mentioned that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam started the salat, say duhr, asr, in the Maghrib, because it's the timing is so short.
There are opinions that Maghrib is wusta, but this is a minority opinion, and the majority of ulama have said either Fajr or Asr. And Ibn Abbas and Aisha, they both said Asr. And in fact, in Aisha's Mushaf, she actually had حافظوا على الصلوات وصلاة الوسطى صلاة العصر وقوموا لله قانتين. She actually had that phrase written down in Aisha's Mushaf. She had her own Mushaf. And because of this, but I mean, by the way, all of the 5 prayers have been called wusta by various scholars in our history. All of the 5 prayers. So you're not coming from far left field, as they say. There are some positions like this, but these are minority opinions. The majority of ummah have said ya imma al-asr, ya imma al-fajr. Okay, sisters, any questions? No questions. This over here. Bismillah. We are getting there. We're going to get to Friday prayer. There's a whole chapter on Friday, and we'll see the Hanbali madhab is the only madhab that says Friday prayer has its own timing. And the other 3 madhab says Friday prayer is the dhuhr timing. Okay? So this madhab that we're going to study is the only madhab that has unique timing for Friday prayer. Okay? Question or scratching your head? Yalla bismillah. Is there any evidence for adhab al-qabr from the Quran? Yes, there is. Yes, there is. يعرضون عليها غدوا وعشيا ويوم القيامة أدخلوا آل فرعون أشد العذاب. Where is the Hafiz Sab? Do you have any idea? You cannot remember. Huh? You can recite with me, but not. يعرضون عليها غدوا وعشيا ويوم القيامة أدخلوا آل فرعون أشد العذاب. That Allah Azza wa Jal mentions about the people of Fir'aun, the father and son of Fir'aun, that the Jahannam, that the punishment of Allah will be shown to them morning and evening. Then on the day of judgment, وَيَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ, then on the day of judgment, they will be punished the worst of all punishment. So the fact that Allah is saying the punishment is being shown to them morning and evening, then they will be caused to enter the day of judgment. This shows that there is a punishment before the day of judgment. Correct? So that is why the adhab and na'im of qabr is a fraction of the adhab and na'im of the akhirah, because there is a minor hisab. Our Prophet ﷺ said when a person dies, the qiyamat al-sughra takes place on him. So the minor hisab takes place. Munkar and nakir is the minor hisab. Okay? Munkar and nakir is the minor hisab. Are you not questioned immediately as you die? Right? That right there is the minor hisab. And the minor hisab will get you minor rewards or minor punishments from the qabr. And therefore the adhab al-qabr and the na'im al-qabr is something that Sunni Islam has unanimously agreed to, so much so they have put it in their textbooks of Aqidah. Because the Mu'tazila denied adhab al-qabr and na'im al-qabr, and they said it doesn't make sense to punish and reward in the grave. But to deny adhab al-qabr and na'im al-qabr is to basically deny hadith. Because the hadith is mutawatir. You literally have hundreds of a hadith about na'im al-qabr and adhab al-qabr. Okay? And there is a number of evidences. سَنُعَذِّبُ مَرَّتَيْنِ is not explicit. There is an opinion that says adhab al-qabr, but there's another one as well. Duna dhalik. No, but see, all of these are adhab and duna dhalik could be in this world. Okay? There are other opinions as well about, there are other evidences as well about adhab al-qabr that occur in the Quran. But the fact of the matter is that there's only 2 or 3 verses that one could say are relatively explicit. And this is one of them, that نار جهنم يعرضون نار جهنم يعرضون عليها غدوا وعشيا ويوم القيامة يردون إلى أشد العذاب. The fire of hell will be shown to them morning and evening. Then on the day of judgment, they will be caused to enter it the worst of punishments. So what does it mean, shown to them morning and evening? This is literally the hadith mentions that the adhab al-qabr, they will see Jahannam, and it will be shown to them morning and evening. Okay, and there are other verses as well. مما خطيئاتهم أغرقوا فأدخلوا نارا فلم يجدوا لهم من دون الله أنصارا. This is another one that is mentioned, that because of their sins they will be drowned in punishment. Then they will be caused to enter Jahannam. What does it mean? They will be drowned in their punishment, then enter Jahannam. What is drowned in the punishment? فأغرقوا فأدخلوا نارا. What is this? Before entering the nar, there is another punishment. This is also in Surah Nuh as well. So the 2 main verses, Surah Ghafir and Surah Nuh, they mention some punishment before Jahannam. Right? Which one? Repeat it again. Yeah, so this is the malaikatul adab. This is different than, even though it's part of it, adab al qabr. So the malaika, when they take you as well. So all of the verses that mention the malaika punishing the person as well, they are used to talk about adab al qabr, even though it's one section of adab al qabr, but it's there as well. Okay. In any case, the point is adab al qabr and na'im al qabr is mutawatir. It is something that is too many ahadith have mentioned it. And in fact, there's a famous hadith, adab al qabri haqqun. There's a hadith, adab al qabri haqqun. Simple as that. So to deny it is to deny the haqq. And Aisha says, I never heard the Prophet ﷺ pray any salah except that after it he would seek refuge in Allah from adab al qabr. Right? This is in Bukhari. Every single salah, Allahumma ni'udhu bika min adab al qabr. This would be a constant theme. And so many hadith about adab al qabr. So there's mutawatir, no point in denying it. The questioning of the qabr is called fitnatul qabr. And the fitnatul qabr and the adab al qabr are separate things. Because the fitnatul qabr will be to everybody. Even the Muslim, even the mu'min will have the fitnatul qabr. The fitnatul qabr, didn't we go over this 2 years ago, 3 years ago? We went over all of this in detail. This is the fitnatul qabr. So the fitnatul qabr will be for the Muslim and the muttaqi and the mu'min. Only one group will be saved from the fitna, the shaheed. The only group that will be saved from the fitna is the shaheed. Everybody else will have to undergo the fitna. As for the adab or the na'im, that is after the fitnatul qabr. Okay? As for your question, it doesn't make any sense to be rewarded or punished before the actual Jahannam and nar and whatnot. So when you're riding first class in the plane, where does the rewards begin? At check-in, صح? In fact, even when you drop the bags, if you go to the Khalij, they have separate airports for business class, separate lounges. Before you enter the plane, you begin to taste the rewards of paying $20,000 to get in. صح ولا مش غلط؟ ها؟ Yeah, so the Quran does indicate, but it's not as explicit as maybe some would like it to be. But there are indirect references that there's adab al-qabr and na'im al-qabr. Sister in the back, go ahead and finish up. Bismillah. Final question, yes. Are there any specific surahs that are regular for the 5 salawat? No. For the sunnah, yes, we talked a little bit about that, but not for the 5 daily salawats. There's nothing that the Prophet told us to read for the fard salawats that we should make a sunnah for. But he did indicate, or the Sahaba memorized from him. So for example, that Surah al-Ikhlas and Surah al-Kafirun and Ikhlas for the rak'ah of Fajr, right? The 2 sunnahs of Fajr, right? The sunnah of Fajr is Ikhlas and Kafirun. And the sunnah of Tawaf as well, Ikhlas and Kafirun. Okay? Yes, go ahead. Yes, go ahead. We will get to this next class, inshallah. The very next class we'll be talking about this, inshallah. Inshallah. With that, inshallah, we will conclude our Fiqh of Salah and continue next Tuesday, inshallah.